This week we're going to learn how to create a multi-page brochure, how to create master pages, and page numbering, so lots of good stuff in this chapter. The files you need are called museum. So go ahead and unzip the museum file, and we're going to start our new document. Choose print, and you need one called letter half. If you don't see that in your print presets, just click view all presets and you should see it. Change this to inches. If you couldn't find it, you can just type in this width and height and it will work. We're going to call this exhibits. So once again, inches. Make sure facing pages is turned on. Turn on primary text frame. You want 2 columns right here. And think about what that means is instead of just 1 column of text in a book, you know how sometimes you have 2 columns of text? That's all it's asking you. For your margins, you need to be 0.5 on all sides, so make sure this is clicked. And for bleeds, make sure this is clicked. We need to be 1.25 and hit create. So you see how it has 2 columns? If you don't see these rulers, click on view rulers to get make sure those are visible. We now can save this, so go ahead and put it in your work in progress folder. Roberts Amy exhibits. Okay, so this is our main file. Leave that open and we're going to open a file that the client has sent us. So file open and go find your folder. So the client has already done the cover and they want us to use it. So we're going to open this one called cover. Okay, so all is just, it's a little confused because the folder was zipped and it was made on a different computer. So say update modified links. It's just having a problem finding them, but it should be fine. So I am in the workspace called Window Workspaces Advanced. So go ahead and change to that. And you'll see a thing called links right here. This is just making sure that it went back and got all of those links. So it would tell us if there was a problem and we could use this to fix it. So it should be fine. It's not giving us any warnings or anything. So mine is fine. Let's now go right here to pages. And you can see that they have created these 2 pages for us. That's the front cover, and then that's the back cover. So we're going to make all of the pages between, and they've already done this work for us. Now, in my last video, we talked about paragraph styles and character styles. They've already created all these paragraph styles. We'd love to use those over in our project, so we need to turn these things into master pages so we can use them over there. So in pages, we need to turn these into what they call master pages. Now, I talked to you guys about master pages in the very first Getting Started with InDesign video that I made for you. If you didn't watch that, go back up to InDesign 1 and watch it because that's going to explain master pages. So let's take the one that is called 1 and just go and drag it underneath just about where I've got mine and drop it. If we kind of pull this down, you can see it made a whole separate one with the thing that I just pulled down, and it called it Be Parent. So right click on the little icon that it has made, and let's go to Parent Options. And we want to call this Front Cover and hit OK. Now grab the back cover, drag that up and drop it here. We're going to right click on the little icon, Parent Options, and call this Back Cover. So it wants you to double click on this one right here, then shift, double click on this one right here so both of them are blue, and we need to delete this parent spread. So it kind of, that one was there already and we just need to delete it. So now we have the 2 master pages that we want to use. So we're going to save them. So let's File, Save As, and put it in your Work in Progress folder as Cover-Parents. So we can just close that now. And let's go back to our original, make sure it's the one that's called Exhibits. And go up to your pages and click on the hamburger menu, go down to Parent Pages and say Load Parent Pages. And we're going to go find that file we just made. Make sure you go into your Work in Progress folder. Don't grab it from the student files because we need that new one that we just made. Cover Parents. And hit open. So do you see it brought those over? And if you look in your paragraph styles, it brought our paragraph styles over. And another thing that's good is it gave us the swatches that were created for this. So this is going to help us. Let's go back up to pages. So right now it has just made us this default page, but it has nothing attached to it. So it's got none. So we need to actually tell it we want you to use one of these parent pages. So grab the one that says front cover and just pick it up and drag it down. So our first page is going to be the front cover. And we want to make sure we have our view turned on right. So go to View, Extras, and make sure Show Frame Edges is turned on. Mine's already turned on, that's why it says Hide. So just make sure that's turned on. So now pick up the one called Back Cover, and you can just pick it up and drag it down into the nothing, and it will make it where it's supposed to be. And that makes sense that this would be on the first page and that would be on the last page. Now, the back cover actually needs to be on this other side over here. So the easiest way to do this is I'm going to go get this one right here that has just pretty much nothing assigned to it. We're going to assign to it in just a second. Pick this one up and drag it to the left. And when you see that little white line, drop it. And it knows, oh, you want this to be up. That's called the facing pages that we turn on when we're making a new one. So it knows, oh, this is going to be a regular page, and then we're going to have the back cover. So these are spreads. They're going to be two when you open it up, and a picture or something could go across both of them. If you want to select both of them, you just double click on the word. Do you see how they're both blue? But I'm going to select this just to get off of it. If you want just one side of it, you just click that one. So there is a difference. Notice that if you click up here, I'm now designing in a parent page. If I click down here, I'll be designing on that page and that page only. So whenever you're making these changes that you want to go to every single page, you have to make sure that you're designing up here. So I want to be just on this left-hand side. So make sure that that's the one you're seeing and that that's the one that's blue. So we're now going to change some of the way we want this to look. Making sure that you're just on this one, we're going to go to Layout, Margins and Columns, and bring this dialog up. And we're going to make some changes based on what our client has told us. So make sure these are not linked because we don't want them to all be the same. And I do want preview on so I can kind of see how it's changing. We want the bottom margin, which is this one right here, to be 3.5 inches. So you see how it changed that, but just on this side, not on the other side? Okay, so we've changed the left side's going to look like this, and that'll be that way on every page that we apply this to. Hit OK. Now we're going to use something called the gap tool. It's right here. This is really good if you need to change the margins and you want to do it visually. If you want to do it visually instead of using math, you can use this gap tool. So go ahead and grab the gap tool, and we're going to go ahead and change this and make it the same. So just drag it up until it fits. And you see it's telling me the height 3.5. And go ahead and let that go. So now none of our type can go below where we made these margins. So now let's do the other side. So click on this one and make sure this is blue, and we're going to change the margins there. So we're going to say Layout, Margins, and Columns. And make sure this is not clicked right here. And we're going to change this one's bottom margin to 6.5. But this time, click this Adjust Layout button. And it's going to do what we just did with the gap tool for us. So this is just a different way to do it. We told it, yeah, go ahead and change everything to be the same as the margins. So it's just two different ways of doing the exact same thing. So I'm just going to use my space bar to move this over a little bit. Now we need to make sure we're on both pages. So double click on the word A parent and make sure both of them are blue. We're going to create a text frame. So go ahead and get your text frame and just draw a box down here, and then we'll make it the right size. Grab your selection tool and make sure you've selected the text frame, and it should be on the top left reference point. X needs to be at minus 0.125. Hit your tab key. Y needs to be at 5.25, so that's 5.25. The width needs to be 3, and the height needs to be 2.5. Now make sure this text box is still selected and we need to go fill it. So click on fill up here and it should be this weird brown that is at the bottom. Remember, these swatches were brought over when we brought our master pages over, so this will match. So it should be filled with that. Now with that selected, go up to Object, Text Frame Options. Here in General, make sure this is unclicked. And for the right, we need it to be 0.125. The left one needs to be 0.625. Okay, and do you see it's telling us, even though we have this box, we only want our text to go in this part so that it'll line up with our other margins. So now we need to make another box. Click on the text tool and just draw kind of a box down here. Let's grab it, make sure it's selected with the selection tool, and then we're in the upper left-hand corner reference. And what you need to put it to is X needs to be 8.375, tab 6.25, width is 2.125, and height is 1.5. And now let's go back up and change the text. So that's in Object, Text Frame Options. This time you can turn this on because all four of them need to be the same. And it's going to be 0.125. All right, now grab the selection tool and I want you to just click once to select this top text frame. And you can see it knows it's a text frame and it's actually the primary text frame because it has this little icon on it. So it's saying when you start putting text on here, it's going to go here first. But we need to make this part of it too. Like after it puts all the text in here, I want it to go down to this one. So click Shift and select that next one too to select it. And now I want you to grab this little thing here once, and then click this once. Basically, we've just told it, after you're done with this, I want you to flow it into the next one. We've kind of done that before, so let's go and actually look at that. View, Show Text Threads. Do you see it knows now? Start with this, then I want you to go this, and then I want you to go this. The reason it knows to go to this now is the first time we did it. In fact, I'm going to back it up so I can kind of show you what I just did. Do you see before we did it, when we had the text threads, it knew that this was supposed to be there and then it went straight up there. But what I did was tell it, fill this first, then go to this, then go to this. So the way I did that was to just click this one once, Shift added that one, and then I told it go to this one. All right, so that's good. Let's save our work. So when we do it, this is going to work, but we still have this one down here. So let's add that one in. So we're going to select this last one, Shift, select this one, then grab this little thing at the bottom and tell it you need to go down here. So that's working correctly. We don't really need to look at this anymore. If you want to go turn it off, the text threads. That was extras, hide text threads. All right, so now we just need to make a graphic element that's not going to have any type in it. It's just there. So make sure we're still on the spread. Just double click a parent. Both of them are blue. We're going to go grab this rectangle frame tool and just click and drag kind of a bigger rectangle down here. And we're going to put some pictures in there eventually. So let's put it in the right place. Grab your selection tool, make sure it's selected, and make sure you're on the top left reference point. It needs to be at 2.875 for X, 2.1875 for Y, 8.25 width, 5.75 height. Now with that still selected, let's go over to swatches. And we need to choose this brown that we've chosen for the other. So just click on that once. But this time we don't want it to be 100% of the ink. We only want 20% of the ink. So just click on that and type in 20%. Remember that this is going to be printed as a booklet. So what we're telling it is I only want 20% of the ink to be put down on the paper. So it'll end up being kind of lighter, and we can just put stuff on top of it. The last thing we need to do is we want to make sure that this is on the back. So right click on it and say Arrange, Send to Back, because we want it to be on the very back of this design. And let's also make sure there is no stroke on it. So click on the color of stroke and say None. So now we put this in back, so this one should be on top of it. Let's click on that one and change its color. So go over here to Fill, click on it and say Paper, which means white. And we want to paper, but this time we do want to deal with opacity, not with tint, because we want it to show through to the other. So let's go ahead and say 85 for opacity. And you can save. We're still in our parent pages. We're making changes to these parent pages. But realize that if we needed to put page numbers on an 800-page book, that would take us forever. So we're going to set up an automatic page numbering on our parent page so it'll do it to every page that's created after that. So before we do that, go down here in your Tools panel right here to the View options and make sure Hidden Characters is turned on, because we're about to make a hidden character and we need to make sure to see it. Make sure that you have both of these selected, so double click on the word A Parent if they're not both selected, and grab yourself a text box, and let's just kind of draw a little small text box down here. Make sure it's selected with the selection tool, and let's tell it where it should be. It should be at 6 inches for X, 8.5 for Y, 4.5 width, and 0.2 inches in height. Now grab your text tool and just click once inside there, and we're going to go ahead and type Summer Special Exhibits Catalog, because we want that to be on the bottom of every single page. We want those words to be on the bottom of every single page. Now click 4 times to select all of that. And in Properties, let's change this to ATC Coral Normal, and it should be 8-point font. And then also make sure that it is on right alignment right here in Paragraph. So you can zoom in a little bit, Alt scroll your mouse. And let's grab our Type tool and just click once right after Catalog. And you can see it flashing, it's right there. Don't worry about that little hashtag, that's one of these special characters. It's not really there. So click the insertion point right after the G in Catalog and just hit the space bar once to make a new space. Then we're going to say Type, Insert Special Character, Marker, Current Page Number. And you should see a little A appear. That's on the real pages, it's going to change that A to the current page number. So don't worry about this little hashtag. That's one of these hidden characters. And these little dots is a hidden character telling us there's a space there. So I want you to click and drag to the left a little bit to highlight that space. So this is just a regular space that we got just by hitting the space bar. Graphic designers are absolutely insane about not using those spaces. They want you to use something called an M space, spelled E-M, or an N space, spelled E-N. An M space is a space based on whatever font you have. So it's going to be different than just a space that would be created by your Windows OS or your Mac OS. It's actually a space that is based on the font. The same thing when you do dashes. You'll hear them talk about an M dash or an N dash. It's a special dash that is based on the font. So that we do not get mad at, so that we do not get all the graphic designers mad at us, we need to use an M space instead of just a regular space. And believe me, this is the type of thing that will get you respect from other graphic designers, and it does make a difference. Once you get really into graphic design, you'll kind of see the difference. So we're going to highlight that space and change it. So go up to Type, white space, and say M space. And that little line is telling us that we're putting an M space. After your M space, I want you to click, after the M space, just click a / on your keyboard. It should be in the lower right-hand corner of your keyboard near the shift. After you've done that, you need to add another M space. So that's type, white space, M space. And let's go ahead and save again. Okay, so we're about ready to bring in all of the text that our client sent us, but let's make sure we've got our preferences right. So I'm going to go to Edit Preferences. For Mac, it's in the Indesign menu. And just go to the Type and make sure this Smart Text Reflow is turned on. End of story, all of this, and then delete empty pages. So delete empty pages, if we end up finishing all of our text on the left side, it'll go ahead and delete that extra right page. If you don't have that turned on, it won't do that. So we're going to set this up and then we're going to import the font that the client sent to us. So say OK. So make sure Pages is open, and we don't want to be on the master pages anymore. We've got those pretty much set up the way we want. So just click off of that and then click once on page 2 so you can see that it's blue, because that's where we want to start bringing in all this new stuff. So go to File, Place, go find this week's folder, and you see this Exhibits. Now that is a Word document, and we need to unclick Replace Select Items, but we do want to see import options. Now, let's think about this. Our client may have done some weird things in Microsoft Word, like they might have hit spacebar a bunch of times if they were trying to indent, or they might have hit enter a bunch of times to leave spaces. So you have to be careful with that. Sometimes you want to keep the format that they've done, or sometimes you might just want to strip it away and start over again. Right now, the book has told us that this client's pretty good, so we're going to use what they did as a basis for what we're going to do, but we're going to have to change it some. So realize when a client sends you stuff, you may want to just get rid of everything they've done. For this choice, what we need to do, all of this is fine. We don't want to use photographer's quotes. Make sure to say preserve styles and formatting. So that's going to keep what our client did, because I know our client's pretty good. Right here for manual page breaks, we want to have no breaks, meaning where Microsoft Word thinks it should put the end of a page doesn't mean it's going to be what we want to be on the page. We do want to track it and all this stuff, leave that okay. And we're just going to import the styles automatically. So say OK. Now you see it's loaded everything up into there. Make sure that you're on page number 2 and that's blue, and just click once. It's going to load it into page 2 and then make as many pages as it needs to. And if you go look at all these pages, you can see they all have our automatic text on it. They have our page numbers down there. Now, right now you're probably seeing all these hidden characters. If you want to really look at the way it's going to look at, do you remember down here we said show hidden characters? That's the way it's going to look. And I kind of don't like that amount of spacing, but that's what our client wanted, so we're going to leave that. I'm going to go ahead and turn that back on in case we need it. So if we look at all this, it has put all of these, it's made as many pages, but you can see we've got some problems that it doesn't know how to deal with. It is a computer. It's not a genius artist like we are. So let's kind of go back up and fix this. Know that from the pages, you can just kind of double click and it will take you to whichever one you need to work on. We're going to go ahead and start on number 2. So if you double click on it, it's going to bring number 2 up, and you can still zoom in with Alt Scroll and all that stuff. So let's grab the type tool and just click once anywhere within this J. Paul Getty Museum. And remember, it had some paragraph styles. We're going to go ahead and change some paragraph styles. So now that we're selected in there, just say Control A, and it'll select everything in the whole story. And we want to click this button right here, which is Clear Overrides, telling it I'm gonna fix any of these things, just clear whatever override there is in all of this because we need to fix it. So now just kind of click off and let's go deal with the very first one. So we want to change the way this looks and it's going to change all of them. So just click once anywhere inside the Paul Getty Museum. And that one is, it tells you it's using the heading paragraph style. So when we look at all these paragraph styles, these are ones that were imported in kind of with Microsoft Word. These are the ones that were already created when we made that master page. So we might want to use some of these and we might not. So we're gonna, if we click on this once, we can see that it's using this one called heading. That came from Microsoft Word. And that's good to know. That's kind of what our client was thinking, but we're not going to use that one. So just right click and say delete that style. And once we delete it, it wants to know, well, what do you want to replace it with? Well, we're going to replace it with one that matches our cover. So that would be called page head. So just say, we're going to delete that one, and everything that is using that one, we want it to use page head. And say OK. Do you see it went and changed that one and this one? And if you go look at any other pages, it's changed them all. So instead of using what we imported from our client, we're going to use the one that was imported from our cover. Click off of all of that just to make sure none of this text is selected at all. And we want to grab this one called normal and just drag it down to the trash can. We're not going to use that one at all. And just say we want no paragraph style for anything that's normal. So let's deal with this second little paragraph that says the Getty preserves and all that stuff. Click the type tool and just click once in that second paragraph. And you can see that it's using the one called location. So it immediately highlighted that one when I selected inside that paragraph. So we want to right click on location and say edit location. And this is going to pop up. So make sure this preview is clicked on so we can actually see it change things as we do this. So the first one you need to go to is the one called span columns down here. And we're gonna, so it's right now it's set to just this one column. We want to say that you can go over the column. Do you see how it changed it? So now, because remember that these little lines are not going to actually print out. They're just there for us to see. So it's going to span across that whole thing. And then we want a little bit of a space between this one and the next thing that starts. So space after the span, we want that to be 1.25. That is looking more like an actual book. So now go up to paragraph rules, and a rule is like a straight line. If you've ever done web design, you'll put a horizontal rule sometimes, which is an HR in code, and it's just saying we want a line after all of this. So do we want it to be above this or below it? We want it to be below. Click rule on. We want the weight to be 3. And the type right here, we want to do white diamond. And I think it's a little close to that, don't you? So let's change the offset to 0.0625 and hit OK. And if you go look, it has done that after the first paragraph on all of our pages. So that's looking a lot better. Let's save. I'm going to move over a little bit with my space tool so I can see this part. So this is looking a lot better, but we need to tell it where to break and go to the next information and that kind of thing. So we can do all that in our paragraph styles. So here on the page head, make sure nothing is selected. So just click in the gray outside and go to page head, click it once, then right click and say edit page head. In the keep options part down here, we need to say on next even page. So what we're telling it is whenever you see this one called page head, I only want you to use it if it's on an even page. So that's saying that would be things that are only on the left. So we don't want it to look like that if it's over here on the right. I only want you to use page head if it's on the left. Let's hit OK, and if you zoom out, you should be able to see, yeah, it took, do you remember there was one over here on the right? It now took it. It's only going to make it look like that if it's on the even side. That's pretty cool that it fixed all that for us. Let's go ahead and save again. Okay, so let's go down to 4 and 5. So it should start with Italian Masters. And let's look at this kind of did you know situation going on here. So make sure nothing is selected just by clicking off here in the gray. And let's go back to our paragraph styles. And let's right click on box head and say edit box head. When it says based on, make sure that says subhead. So basically what we're saying is we want the top of this box thing, the thing that says did you know, to be based on the subheader, which was this thing up here. So we want them to be similar, but same, different. So it's going to be based on one of the other ones. Here in basic character formats, instead of bold, which is what the other one was, we need to change that to normal. And then in advanced character formats, the other one was 90%, but we're going to make this one be 100. Now you should have preview clicked on right here, and you can see it is changing this within the box. When you go back over to general, you can see it's kind of said it's same as the style, but we added it to this and we added this. It's kind of telling you everything that's in here. So it's telling you all of this stuff that it's added to. We're actually going to click reset to base. And then we're going to go change subhead a little bit. So I know that seemed like we were doing a lot for no reason, but that's okay. We're going to fix it. So hit OK. So now let's go to caption head, right click on that and say edit caption head. For based on, we need to base it on the subhead. And it's giving us all of this subhead plus all this other stuff. We just want it to be based on subhead. So let's reset it back to subhead and then make our changes. So let's make these following changes. Basic character format should be bold italic. Point should be 8. Your leading can be on auto. And then instead of all caps, just say normal. Here in advanced character formats, instead of 90% scale, let's do 100. And in indents and spacing, choose right justified and say OK. Now let's change the subhead. Right click on that and say edit subhead. Down here in keep options. So what it's asking us here is, do you want us to start all this formatting even if we're kind of in the middle of another section? We're going to say no. If you need to start this, I want you to wait until the next column until you start it. We don't want like half of it to be in one column and the other half to be in the next column. See how it immediately changed that? Because some of that stuff was not supposed to be in there. So let's click OK. So if we look at what it did here, some of this stuff like right here, we said don't do this unless it's into the next thing. So instead of having all this junk over here, it waited and put it down there. So that was what that choice did. It said no, wait for all this formatting until the next little area. Let's go back up to 2 and 3. So just double click on the little 2, 3. So all this work for us has done a couple of things that is seen as bad form in graphic design and typography. Do you see how this word right here is all by itself? That is what we call an orphan. Think about if you don't have any parents, you're an orphan. So it's not attached to anything. So these are things called widows and orphans. Widows would be if you just have a word or a really small sentence that's all by itself at the top and then it doesn't have anything it's attached to. An orphan would be like this at the very end. So it would take us a while to go through and make sure we don't have any widows and orphans. So we can tell it in our styles things to help us not have widows and orphans. So with your type tool, just go click here in this third paragraph that starts with the museum seeks to inspire curiosity. Just click anywhere so it knows that we're talking about this right here, this paragraph. If we go back over to paragraph styles, we can see that that is body copy, and that makes sense. That's the main copy. So let's tell it some things, telling it we don't want you to have any widows and orphans. So we need to change the style a little bit just so it can help us to get rid of any of those things. So let's right click on body copy and say duplicate style. And on this one, instead of saying body copy, we're going to call this body copy, no indent. And in the indents and spacing, so we want this to be the same as regular body copy, but in the indents and spacing, we're going to take away this first line indent. So we're going to put 0. So this is just a version of this that does not have the indent. Back here in general, let's make a change. Go ahead and hit OK. Okay, so we make sure our insertion point is still right here where it should be. And this time, you see, it has body copy applied to it. We need to apply this first one, body copy, no indent. So just click that once. And you see it has added that one, which was exactly the same. It just didn't have an indent. Now, over here on this, if we click this once, it thinks it's body copy, which is one of the reasons we're having this problem over here. So I'm just going to click and drag and get all of this stuff, and I'm going to say body copy, no indent. Look, that's already a lot better. And let's go ahead and add it to these two. So all this stuff, say body copy, no indent. Now let's go down to page 4 and 5 and see if it could help us here. So we know that we want this first paragraph to not be indented so that it matches with everything else, I think. So in this one, you can see we've got an orphan right there. This is looking kind of a little strange in here, so let's kind of fix these. So we're going to change this paragraph with our type tool, click it once, and say no indent. This one should be no indent. And you can see, look, it fixed our orphan. Now, another thing that we can tell it is, do we want it to allow really long words to be hyphenated? I hate hyphenation, but we're going to do what the book says, because that can help with widows and orphans too. Instead of just leaving an entire big word at the end of something, we can let it hyphenate the word so that it won't make a widow or an orphan. So let's change body copy in all of these pages and tell it what we want it to do with hyphens. So right click on body copy. So that's everything else has got body copy attached. So we're going to say edit body copy. Okay, so down here in hyphenation, right now we've told it we're not allowing you to hyphenate. So we're going to tell it, okay, you can hyphenate. And you see things shifted already because like this word, say devotion, was really long in it. It just hyphenated it. But you can tell it, how do you want me to deal with this? Like only words that have more than 7 letters, only words that have more than 8 letters, that kind of thing. See, the only changes the book is saying is you have to wait until after 3 letters before you can hyphenate. So 3, and you can't leave, you have to have at least 3 at the end. Does that, hopefully that kind of makes sense. You can see it kind of changed it. Like you wouldn't want it to hyphenate after just 1 letter. That wouldn't make sense. I don't like hyphenation. I would maybe even change it to bigger than that, words that are bigger than that. But we'll do what the book says right now. So that's what that wants for hyphenation. So say OK. And you will see it has changed these and made them actually a lot, it's made them a lot prettier as far as how it does. But you see how the word Renaissance, that kind of thing, is hyphenated now. Okay, so now that we've got this, let's go through the rest of the pages and make sure that the first paragraph has the no indent, and then the rest of them should be just regular on body copy. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, after you've finished that, we need to be on the page 10 and 11. You can get to that by going to the pages, and also know that it tells you down here what page you're on. So I'm on pages 10 and 11. So if you look at this right here, do you see how this, this is almost like a paragraph widow. So conventions would tell us that we need to have at least 2 lines of a paragraph before we go to another column or go to a new page. So this would be considered bad form to just have 1 line of this paragraph and then go on to the next one. So that's a no-no. So we need to go tell it, hey, don't let that happen. So back in paragraph styles, no, hold on. Okay, after you've finished that, we need to be on the page 10 and 11. You can get to that by going to the pages, and also know that it tells you down here what page you're on. So I'm on pages 10 and 11. So if you look at this right here, do you see how this, this is almost like a paragraph window. So conventions would tell us that we need to have at least 2 lines of a paragraph before we go to another column or go to a new page. So this would be considered bad form to just have 1 line of this paragraph and then go on to the next one. So that's a no-no. So we need to go tell it, hey, don't let that happen. Now let's open up our paragraph window. Just go to Window, Type, Paragraph. And here in the hamburger menu, let's say Keep Options, and click this Keep Lines Together. Now we could tell it always keep the whole paragraph together, which would mean it would just take that and move it on to the next one. But, or we could say at the beginning of the paragraph, make sure to have at least 2 lines, and at the end, it makes sure to have 2 lines. Because that's a graphic design basic. So you should always have at least 2 lines of a paragraph. So say okay, and it should fix it. All right, so let's go ahead and save. So let's go find page 2 and 3. And in paragraph styles, we have one called Box Bullet. So let's right click on that and say Edit. And we have this one called Bullets and Numbering. So we want to say Bullets, and we're going to click Add. So you can see it's already added bullets, but we can change that a little bit. So it has some of these defaults, but we can also click this Add over here. Now it's showing us all extra characters and things that are available with this ATC Coral that we already have. And there's a bunch of cool little things we could choose. But the book wants us to choose fonts that have a bunch of weird stuff in that. So for Windows, it would be Wingdings, and for Macintosh, it would be Zapped Dingbats. So I'm just going to type in Wingdings. And in here for Wingdings, you'll have a lot more choices. So, and it says you can choose whatever one you think would go well with a museum. I don't know. I'm going to choose these little spectacles. Let me see if that looks, they have that in bold. No. Okay, so I don't know. I'm going to choose that. I might come back and change it. I'm going to say okay. And you can see it's added that little cute little icon into there. So make sure to click on that right there to say that's the one we want. So you make sure you've clicked that. It should say this little thing right here, which is basically, that means tab. So if somebody clicks tab, you know, we want that to be in there. So the left indent is a little bit much. For left indent, we want it to be at 0.2 inches. And hit tab. First line indent, we need to be at minus 0.2. That looks good. Let's go ahead and hit OK. Okay, with the type tool, I'm going to select this whole thing here. And let's see, I'm having a hard time, reading this. It's darkness on darkness. So let's open up swatches and make sure it's on type. And let's change this to paper. Now, if we click away from it, you can say, yeah, that's easier to read. So I'm going to select it again. And this time, I'm going to use what I've done here to change the paragraph style, instead of doing it manually, which is what we've done before. So let's go to paragraph styles, and this is called Box Bullet. So let's right-click and say Redefine Style, telling it whatever I have selected, I want you to redefine this style by that, using that. You see how it changed all of them? And it should have changed it on all of the pages. So let's do the same thing with the Did You Know? So let's click Did You Know? And change the swatches to paper. And then this is box head. Let's do the same thing, redefine style. So that's kind of a little bit easier way that you can redefine it instead of doing it manually. So if you double click on the zoom tool, it should take you back out. Double click on the hand tool and it'll make it so you can see the whole thing. Move paragraph out of the way. I think I'll need it again. So let's look at this down here, this Getty Villa that we haven't messed with this much. Now, sometimes you just want to change it on one, but not on everything, so you can do that manually. With the selection tool, we're going to select that and then right-click and say Fitting, Fit Frame to Content. So it just changed it. Now, I only did it on this one because we didn't change the paragraph style. We're just changing this one. Now, with this frame still selected, we can go to the Properties panel. And this time we want to do it by the lower right-hand reference point. And we want to make sure Y is on 7.75. It's just going to move it over a little bit. Now let's go look at it on page 4 and 5. Notice it did not change that one, so we can do this one differently than that one. So let's get the type tool and put it right before the word daughters. So just click once and hit Shift Enter. So when you hit Enter, it makes a whole new paragraph. But if you hit Shift Enter, it's just going to put it on the next line. And that works pretty much in every typography program. It works in Microsoft Word, Illustrator, all of them. So Shift. Anytime you hit Enter, it thinks you want a new paragraph. Just do Shift Enter to say, no, we want that to be on the next line. So realize we can do that with this one, and we have not changed it on all of the pages, just on this one. So now we're going to do like we did on the last one. Let's click on the text frame box, right click, Fitting, Fit Frame to Content, and then in Properties, we're going to make sure Y is at 7.75. Okay, so now you need to go through all the pages and make sure there's nothing weird you need to fix. For instance, on this next one, on page 7, we have got an orphan, right? So I'm going to fix that one. The book just is letting you do this yourself. Shift Enter. Okay, believe it or not, we're almost done. So we've got our type looking pretty good, but we've got these big areas with nothing in them. We're going to put some pictures in there. So let's go up to page 2 and 3. All right, so we need to go get all the pictures that are going to go in here. So let's look at this little links panel right here. And you can see there's already a couple of things in here that were loaded into our cover. Remember, it had a bunch of pictures on it and had a logo. So we need to get some more links, but the links panel is good to open. So we'll see these new things that we're going to bring in here. So let's go to File Place and go find your files from this week. And we need to get all of these except for floor and logo because they're already in there. So click Achilles, Control, Battle, Bowl, Herald, Juno, Villa, and Watercolor. None of these need to be selected, and we're hit Open. And you'll see it says that we have 7 things waiting, and it also, we can see them here in our links panel. Okay, so right now if we were to click this, it would load Achilles into there, but that's not actually the one we need for this first page. So if you, on your keyboard, find your page up, pay down, and little arrow buttons, if you click the right arrow, you will go down to, you will go down. So for this first page, we need to actually go to the one called Villa. So just click your buttons until you're on the one called Villa. That's the one that our client wants on this first page. So once it's on Villa in the link panel, you can just click up in the left-hand corner and it should go in there. Now you can just scroll your mouse down to the next page. The next page, use the arrows until you get back up to the one called Achilles. And that's the one that goes on this second page. You can scroll down to the next page. On page 7 and 8, they need the one called Battle. On the next page, they need the one called Juno. On pages 11 and 10 and 11, they need the one called Watercolor. Harold is on page 12 and 13. And Bowl is on page 14 and 15. Now for mine, it is covering up that little part that you saw me go and tell it to put it on top. So I'm just gonna right click on these and move backward, send backward. So that this is on top. So if yours did that, we fixed it in the, I don't know why mine is still doing that, but I'm just gonna right click and say, send to back. You know, sometimes we just have to figure these things out. This should have worked. Hopefully it worked for you guys. You saw me fix it in my menu. I don't know what I did wrong there, but we'll fix it. So we need to make sure these little captions are on the top. So once again, I'm just taking this and moving it to the back. Hopefully you guys are not having to do that. That is correct. Let's go ahead and save. Okay, so make sure you can see pages 2 and 3. And we're gonna go get the eyedropper tool. And it is hidden behind this color theme tool. So you can either right click or click and hold and get the one called eyedropper tool. And let's make sure that it's on fill and not stroke. So if you just click this little button, so we need fill to be there, but not stroke. And I need to get kind of this red rust color. So you can see it's loaded that into our fill. So if we zoom back out, we can now just click once and it's going to load that we chose and throw it into there. So now that's more unified. Now with that same eyedropper, remember it's still got that loaded into it, hover over this title and you see how a little T has appeared? That means, you know, the type tool. So click and drag, because it's given us a little type tool, and it now has loaded that same color into there. Okay, let's do kind of the same thing on the next page. So I'm going to scroll my mouse down until I get this page. Now we need to select a new color. Right now that one is in there. So let's choose a new color. I'm going to choose the gray that's kind of in here. So Alt and click. You see it's loaded that gray in there. Now let's go put that one here. And let's do it up here. Okay, and we're going to do this to all the pages. You can kind of follow me with, I'll do what the book, you know, says to do. So the next page. Remember to click Alt to grab the new color. So we have finished with the design of it, but now we need to think about how it is going to be printed and how we're going to look at it. So our client actually needs this 2 different ways. They need it as a PDF that can be on their website, and then we need to have it printed. So with a print, so a printer is going to need to print it in something like this. These are the pages. So it's going to have to be sent out 2 different ways. So this is what's called a signature. So do you see that they can print this on one big piece of paper and then it will be, you see how it's kind of folded like this. So that's called a booklet. That's called a booklet proof. So if we look at this, how many signatures it would have. So it would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 signatures. So for the website, if we want to see how we would see it, let me go to View, Screen Mode, Presentation. So this is kind of what it would look like if we were to do it that way. So I'm only going to make you do the PDF that they would be using for their website, but please read over that part about printers so that, because most of you are going to be dealing with printers if you continue on, especially to Clemson. So let's create the PDF that has spreads. So we're going to say File, Export. Find your work in progress museum, and we can call it the same thing, but this is the PDF. We are going to choose PDF Interactive, and the reason we're doing it this way is because we want it for a website, so we want to be interactive. We can have page turns and that kind of thing, so it's different than the way we've done PDFs before. So make sure all pages is selected. We do want to make sure spreads is selected. Remember, a spread is something like this that is side by side, the facing pages, and we want them to not just go one page at a time. We want to see the spreads. Right here for viewing, we want to fit the page height so it'll get as big as the monitor but won't distort. For layout, we need to say single page so that when this comes up, it'll just be single page. But when it comes up as a spread, it'll be that. Uncheck open in full screen mode. We don't want it to flip the pages for us automatically. We do want the view after exporting to be on. Now click compression. So we're going to do JPEG 2000. 72 is fine because it's going to be on a computer monitor, and that is what 72 is. Let's go ahead and hit export. It's just telling us that this was in CMYK, but it's going to show us RGB on our computer because our computers are RGB. So say OK. Now remember, we did have it on to show us as soon as it was made, so it is showing it to us. If we click on it, it should go to the next one. So we should be able to scroll our mouse and see all the stuff we have done. Looky, looky. So you need to turn that in and your InDesign file. I hope you learned a lot. And we are finished.